Hey everyone, this is Nick Bartunik. I'm here with Reverend John Gorin, and we are going to do a special reflection episode today for our Reflection podcast series. For those that are new to the Reflection podcast series, this is just a chance for us to kind of do what John has, I think, rightly called sort of a director's cut. This is a little bit of an extension from our weekly sermon space on Sunday mornings where we're preaching, and a lot of thought goes into these sermons, and we don't want to do an hour-long TED Talk, so there's a lot that gets cut down, and we wanted to talk a little bit today about this last week's reading and sermon, which was out of the book of Ephesians. And so, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about, if you could, give us a glimpse into what we were talking about on Sunday.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. There's always more that I'd like to say, typically, than I can say. That's part of our Anglican 20-ish minutes sermon length, I think. But I've just been sitting in the message and in the text that we used, which was out of Ephesians 2, verses 11 to 22. And what's interesting to that, first off, it's really a pivot. Just prior to that section is the famous, "For by grace you've been saved through faith, and this not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." This was a verse that I grew up on, and so pivotal to understanding what God has done for me. And one might understandably expect then the rest of the chapter to start unfolding. Well, what does that mean for me? But it doesn't. It pivots to, what does that actually mean for the church? And this is where, as I was saying in the message, that Paul puts this big panoramic view on what's going on in the church. And sitting in that text about what it means to be that we're serving a Lord who's bringing peace. He's bringing peace between Jews and Gentiles. Long time enemies, like centuries back. The Jews have a memory of the Greeks under Alexander who took their land. And then they have a memory of the Romans under the Caesars who took their land. And then even as Paul is writing it, they're under Roman occupation. So they don't have a great relationship with the Gentiles for very understandable reasons. And the Gentiles don't have a great relationship with the Jewish people for understandable reasons. And yet in the midst of a world where both parties would have real reasons to continue their hatred of one another, Jesus comes into that and makes peace. He says he's the peace, bringing the peace about by his own sacrifice, by his own death, and then bringing each person who belongs to Christ, whether Jew or Gentile, had the same status before they were in him, and now enjoys the same status now afterwards. So the status they had was apart from him. Didn't matter what ethnic group. If you're on top as Roman, didn't matter. If you're being oppressed as a Jew, didn't matter. Your biggest need wasn't resolving that. Your biggest need was belonging to Christ. So now that the two groups within the church of Ephesus that Paul's writing to have experienced that really earth-shattering event for their lives and for the creation of the church, they should be living out of that peace. So it's not, our culture, you and I are raised very much in a culture, I think, of salvation being so individual. And once you made that...
Yeah, it was hyper-individualized.
Yeah, so once you made that decision, what did that really mean? Well, it meant that you had the promise of being with Christ in eternity, that sins that we commit in this life are all forgiven, past, present, future. That's fantastic. But if we only stay there, we lose this amazing calling that we have to be the church, to be a community where the peace of Christ is not only on display, but it's actually reigning, it's ruling. Right. And if people saw that in action, they'd be seeing people that are definite, historical, cultural enemies actually enjoying one another as really good and true friends. Right. Wow. I mean, our culture could use that, seeing Absolutely. People in different groups. So this is really powerful to understand what Christ has done for the church. So he's our peace. And then if that's not enough, just to sort of get us out of our very individualistic mindset in our culture, it says that his purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, like a new humanity. We belong to a new people. We are no longer citizens of our former world and life. We are citizens of a new world and life in the person of Christ for all time and for all eternity. We are one new humanity. And that humanity is defined by Jesus. The ethics of, if you will, are those that were modeled by him, where he is receiving and always reaching out to those that were on the wrong side of the culturally approved folks. He's reaching out to Samaritans when Jews hated them. He's reaching out to the Syrophoenician woman when she was considered an outcast. He's going to those that are sick. The people that were on the outside, he's bringing in on the inside. That's who he is. That's part of the one new humanity. So this is what we're a part of. And this is not only wonderful and just hard to comprehend, but also has an obligation to live out of the new citizenship that we're in. The question that occurred to me that I didn't really ask in the sermon, but is worth asking now is, in this new humanity, how aware are we of the times that we're wanting to smuggle in our old humanity? It's like I still got some habits from the old life, or sort of got some old attitudes and viewpoints from the old life that need to be part of this new humanity. As if we're going to the Lord and asking him to bless our bias or our prejudice or the old way that we saw things or certain people in this new way. I think that's a natural human phenomenon, that we would naturally do that unless we properly understand what he's actually doing. There's so many of our old baggage, if you will, that we can't bring on this journey because Christ died that we wouldn't bring that on the journey. I don't mean mental and emotional baggage, that's a different subject. I just mean like our own sense of identity in something that's primarily rooted in this world, in our own family history or whatever it is, rather than in the person of Christ. And so as we think about the reflection, maybe that question is, Lord, what am I trying to bring into this new people from my old people, this new life from my old life that I just really want you to bless? That's really what I want you to do.
Yeah, and that could even be a hyper-individualized sense of self too. Like I want to bring that into the situation and sort of exist in a weird limbo state of, being part of the quote church body of Christ, but also sort of just keeping to myself at the same time.
Yes, that's right. We can use church to look for kind of the next group of people that needs to affirm us in our own earthly understanding of who we are. Or we can look to the church as people that will be a new group to get on board with the way we think the world should be in whatever shape or form, or whatever the particular cause is. So many churches in the U.S. have divided over the last several years just over very temporal questions, political leanings, or ways to see certain policies in the public square, or
or what the main mission statement on your website is, even.
There's things like that.
What is it that we're saying to people? And dividing over that.
Yeah. To be clear, there are primary issues,
sure.
Being part of God's kingdom, things that are just part of His goodness, truth, and beauty. That's not part of this podcast, but just things that are truly of the kingdom. Those, I think, are primary issues. But there's a host of things that would be called secondary, or as Scripture calls them, disputable matters.
Matters.
We don't have to, we don't know everything. I think we should have that humble posture and really a priority of wanting to protect that new humanity that we're part of, because what attracted us to the new humanity is not the peripheral issues of somebody. It is the person and work and love of Christ. And what will attract other people into that same piece is us, in this part of the new humanity, reflecting what Christ has done through us. So it's life-giving for us, but it's also very needful for us to be able to express that to other people so that others might enter in as well. So those are just some of the key things that that spoke to me, that I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to explore a little bit further in our reflection today. So thanks.
Yeah, great. No, that's excellent. Yeah, thanks for that. And you can definitely check out, if you're just listening to this podcast now, you can listen to the actual sermon that John gave in this same feed. It should be there. It's called Church from God's Perspective. And I'd highly recommend you checking that out. But yeah, thanks for listening. And as always, feel free to share this with some friends or family that might find this helpful or might just find this to be a blessing. As we live in the Silicon Valley, it is not always the case that people are hearing much of church or Jesus to begin with. And so we want to be part of that effort in our community to let people know that they're loved and there's a God that loves them. So, John, thank you for being with me today, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, bye-bye.